The laughter comes first. It's low, deep, and a little naughty. The kind of laugh that makes you forget the man sitting in front of you is 99 years old. Dick Van Dyke leans back in his chair, one leg crossed over the other, still super skinny, still dressed like he's ready to dance at any moment. His smile is big, young-looking, and full of fun. You can almost hear tap-dancing shoes in his voice when he says, "Well, if we're really doing this, I should probably warn you. Some of these memories are a little bit grown up." He winks. That same sparkle in his eyes that made America love him many years ago. You know, people think of me as the nice guy, the guy who whistles, the funny clown, the one who fell over couches and smiled while falling. And they're right, he says, putting his hands up like he's protecting himself, but even nice guys have feelings. I was the singing and dancing guy, but don't let the silly falls fool you. I noticed pretty women just as much as I noticed the dance moves. He laughs, his eyes getting smaller like he's remembering a secret. See, back then Hollywood was a different kind of attractive. It wasn't about what you showed. It was about what you suggested. The way a woman crossed her legs, the way her perfume reached you half a second before she talked. That was the real danger, the hint. And brother, did I get hints? He leans forward, putting his elbows on his knees, making his voice quiet and friendly like he's telling you a secret that should come with a glass of whiskey and a warning. Now, I'm not saying I was perfect. Far from it. But I was smart enough to know that the best kind of daydream is the one you never ruin by making it real. So, when you ask who I wanted to be with, let's just say these women lived rent-free in my imagination for a long, long time. He stops, flashing that smile again. The one that used to be able to sell charm like candy. They were fancy and exciting and sweet-smelling and laughing, and every single one of them could have made me forget my script, my right and wrong, and maybe even my name. I behaved mostly, but good Lord, it wasn't easy. He laughs, a sound that's equal parts innocent and a little bit bad. At 99, I can tell you this much. The heart doesn't get old the way the body does. Wanting someone just gets smoother like an old jazz record. Fewer scratches, but the same tune. And baby, I still remember every note. He straightens up, eyes shining. So, who were they? The 6 women who could have made me forget the camera, the dance moves, and every line I ever learned. He smiles slow, naughty, and happy. Let's start with the first one. 1. Mary Tyler Moore. Dick's smile gets bigger the second her name comes up. It's not the polite smile of old memories, but something warmer, deeper, like he's just been given a secret he thought he'd lost. "Mary," he says, and his voice gets softer in that half-whisper that could melt through memories. Lord, that woman could stop a heartbeat just by walking into practice. He leans back, eyes shining with the kind of mischief that doesn't die even after 90 years. You have to understand, we were supposed to be funny. That was the job. But you try being funny when Mary Tyler Moore is standing 2 feet away in those skirts, smiling like she knows exactly what she's doing to you. He laughs low and warm. I swear, half the mistakes you've seen from the Dick Van Dyke Show were just me trying to remember my lines while she was breathing. He tilts his head, that familiar look of charm sliding into something a little more sinful. She had that clean, wholesome look, America's sweetheart. But underneath it, there was this quiet fire, a slow burn. The kind of woman who could mess you up with one look and make you thank her for it. When we'd practice a scene where she'd touch my arm or lean in close, I'd have to remind myself the cameras were on. Because in that moment it wasn't acting. It was survival. He laughs, shaking his head like a man who's still half in that moment. Now, I was married then, and so was she, and we both had too much respect for what we had. But I'll be honest with you, there were nights I went home, poured myself a drink and thought about the way she'd said my name, just my name. And for a second, it sounded like the sweetest secret in the world. He looks down, smiling to himself, voice turning soft as smoke. Mary was class, beauty, mischief, all wrapped in timing so perfect it could make you dizzy. I loved her like a partner, adored her like someone who inspired me, and yes, wanted her like a fool. But we never crossed the line. That's probably why the chemistry worked, because the tension was real, and we both knew it. He looks up again, smiling that young-looking smile that somehow survived the years. Mary Tyler Moore made every man want to stand a little taller, speak a little smoother, and behave a whole lot better than he really wanted to. I didn't sleep with her, he says with a wink, but she sure as heck kept me awake. 2. Julie Andrews. When her name is mentioned, Dick's whole face lights up. The kind of smile that makes a man look years younger. "Ah, Julie," he says, and the word itself sounds like a sigh wrapped in a song. Now that woman was something else entirely. Grace in human form with a laugh that could wash the dust off your soul. He leans back, shaking his head as if he's watching her walk onto the movie set all over again. The first time I met her was on Mary Poppins. She floated in, and I don't just mean in character. She had this presence, that perfect standing up straight, that voice like fancy champagne, that smile that could make the clouds part, and I'll be honest, I didn't know whether to bow, flirt, or start tap dancing. He laughs low and fond. Julie Andrews could say the word spoonful and make it sound inappropriate, but not because she tried, because she didn't. That's what killed you. Everything about her was clean and proper, but beneath it was this quiet confidence, this warmth that made you want to misbehave just to see her scold you. He leans in, lowering his voice to a secret-sharing whisper. "Now, I'll tell you something. When we were filming Mary Poppins, there was a moment during the rooftop scene. She was standing there in that blue coat, the wind catching her hair, the city lights behind her. And I swear, I forgot I was supposed to be Bert. I wasn't acting. I was just a man trying to remember how to breathe." He chuckles, shaking his head like he still can't quite believe it. Julie was married back then, of course, and I had no business thinking what I was thinking. But I'll tell you what, if she'd turned around and said, "Bert, want to cause some trouble?" I'd have followed her straight off that rooftop without thinking twice. His smile softens, his voice growing tender. But that's Julie for you. She could make you feel like a kid again, and a sinner at the same time. She was pure magic, the kind that doesn't fade with time. Even now when I see her, that same feeling comes rushing back. She looks at you, and suddenly you remember every rule you ever wanted to break. He grins again, that same unstoppable spark lighting his eyes. Julie Andrews, the only woman who could make temptation sound like a lullaby. 3. ANN-MARGRET. Dick lets out a laugh that's half memory, half surrender. The kind a man gives when he knows he's about to get himself in trouble. "Now, ANN-MARGRET," he says slowly, rolling her name like a song he's been humming for 60 years. That woman was trouble in bright color. Beautiful, bold, and burning hotter than a spotlight on opening night. He leans forward, eyes glinting with that old young mischief. You couldn't be on a movie set with her without feeling your heartbeat double. She'd walk in, hips swaying, hair catching the light, and suddenly every man within a mile forgot what decade it was. She didn't flirt. She radiated like the sun had decided to become human just to see who could handle the heat. He laughs again. That deep rolling sound that still carries the echo of youth. We never worked together, not properly. But Hollywood isn't that big. Parties, practices, charity events, you cross paths. And every time I did, I'd have to remind myself that staring wasn't polite. Didn't help that she always caught me doing it. Once she winked just a little and I swear I almost fell off my chair. The man who could trip over an ottoman on cue nearly tripped over his own heartbeat. He pauses, eyes softening. ANN-MARGRET had that spark, that wild energy that made you forget you were supposed to act civilized. She'd laugh and you'd feel it in your bones. She'd dance and you'd forget your name. I remember once watching her perform and thinking, "Lord, I've spent my whole career pretending to be graceful, but she just is." His grin turned sly. I behaved, of course. But if she'd ever turned those green eyes on me and said, "Dick, let's make a little mischief," I'd have been gone. You'd have found me in Vegas smiling like a man who finally made peace with temptation. He sits back, chuckling softly. ANN-MARGRET wasn't just beauty. She was momentum, fire and motion. And even now, if I close my eyes, I can still see that flame. Some women you forget, some you move past. But ANN-MARGRET, he shakes his head, smiling to himself. She's the kind of memory that still smells like danger. 4. Carol Burnett. The smile hits Dick's face before the name's even finished leaving the interviewer's mouth. "Carol," he says, and already he's laughing. That easy, joyful sound that could fill a theater. Now that woman, Lord, she was dynamite wrapped in a laugh. He leans forward, eyes bright with the kind of memory that never quite settles down. People think comedy isn't attractive. They're wrong. Carol Burnett could walk into a room, tell one joke, and suddenly every man there was weak in the knees. There's nothing more dangerous than a woman who can make you laugh while she's stealing your composure. He shakes his head, smiling to himself. We worked together a few times, sketches, specials, the kind of television that doesn't exist anymore. And every single time she'd throw me off balance. I'd be trying to hit my cue and she'd give me that look, that half smile that said, "Don't you dare break." And of course, I'd break every time because that woman didn't just deliver punchlines, she delivered. He chuckles, lowering his voice. There's a moment I'll never forget. We were practicing this little bit where she had to scold me on camera. Finger in my chest, real stern. But she stepped in close, too close, and whispered something off script. I won't repeat it, he says, grinning wickedly, but I'll tell you this. The gentleman in me had to take a long walk around the studio just to cool off. He laughs again, softer now. Carol had this sparkle, that mix of sass and sweetness that made you feel safe one second and hopelessly distracted the next. She'd make you laugh till your ribs hurt and then tilt her head just so, and suddenly you weren't laughing anymore. You were remembering that funny can be dangerously beautiful. He leans back, that twinkle in his eyes not the least bit dulled by age. If she'd ever decided to turn that charm up another notch, he says with a grin, I'd have been done for. I don't know what I'd have done. Probably whatever she told me to. Carol Burnett was proof that laughter and temptation are just two verses of the same song. 5. Angela Lansbury. Dick laughs softly before the interviewer even finishes her name. That warm, knowing sound that belongs to a man who's seen every kind of woman and still remembers the ones who could surprise him. Angela, he says, smiling. Now there's a woman who could knock the wind out of you without ever raising her voice. He settles back, that twinkle of respect lighting his eyes. People remember her from Murder, she wrote. All wit and grace. But you should have seen her in the early days. That woman had presence. She'd walk into a room, and it wasn't about beauty, though she had plenty of that. It was command. A kind of quiet power that made every man stand up a little straighter, just in case she looked his way. He grins. I remember meeting her at an award show in the 60s. She was wearing this emerald gown, the kind that made the whole room look dull by comparison. I said something clever, or tried to, and she just smiled that sly little smile that said she'd heard every line and was still amused by mine. Anyway, that's when I knew I was out of my league. He laughs again, lower this time. Angela had that rare kind of attraction. Subtle, patient, intelligent. She didn't have to flirt. She'd just listen, tilt her head, and suddenly you were confessing things you didn't plan to share. She could make you feel like the only man in the world just by remembering what you said 2 minutes ago. He pauses, a mischievous glint returning. Now don't get me wrong. I behaved as usual. But if she'd ever decided to lean across that table and ask for a little trouble, I'd have been halfway there before my better judgment caught up. There's something about a woman who knows exactly who she is. That's the most dangerous kind of beauty. He smiles softly now, nostalgia creeping in around the edges. Angela Lansbury was the sort of woman who made you want to stand taller, speak sharper, and maybe, just maybe, risk a little chaos. She made elegance feel like temptation dressed in pearls. 6. Lucille Ball. Dick's smile breaks before her name is even spoken. Lucy, he says, chuckling as if just saying it brings her back into the room. Now that was a woman who could light up an entire studio before she even opened her mouth. You didn't just see Lucille Ball, you felt her. Every laugh, every glare, every flash of those eyes could knock a man flat. He leans back, the laughter fading into something softer. I did a few appearances on her shows back in the day, and let me tell you, she ran that set like a general wrapped in diamonds. She was sharp, funny, brilliant, and absolutely terrifying in the best way. She didn't need to flirt. She owned the air around her. The rest of us were just trying not to breathe it wrong. He laughs again, but this time there's admiration under it. Lucy would stand there, script in hand, hair perfect, cigarette between her fingers, and she'd say something that made the whole crew laugh. Then she'd turn that smile on you, and you'd forget every line you'd ever learned. She had timing like dynamite, all rhythm and fire. And that voice, it could cut right through you or melt you depending on what she wanted. He pauses, shaking his head. I remember one night we were rehearsing a skit and she leaned in close, real close, to whisper how she wanted to play the next beat. For a second, all I could think was, this woman could get away with anything. That was Lucy's power. She made mischief look like art. He smiles then, that old glimmer of young awe still alive. Lucille Ball didn't need anyone to chase her. She was already halfway to the next laugh, the next idea, the next empire. But every man who ever worked with her walked away a little dizzy. You couldn't help it. She had that kind of pull. He tilts his head, grin widening again. I always said, if laughter's the shortest distance between two people, then Lucy and I were practically neighbors. She made the whole world laugh and somehow made every man feel like she was laughing with him, not at him. That, he says, eyes twinkling, is the real magic trick.